Today on the newscast, the U.S. government seizes dozens of Iranian websites. Plus, Iran says it thwarted a sabotage attack against one of its nuclear facilities. So what's the real story? Find out coming up. Hey folks, Erick Stakelbeck here. Welcome to the Watchman Newscast. It has been a very eventful week thus far for the Iranian regime. The week started with Ibrahim Raisi, the man known as the Butcher of Tehran, being elected as Iran's new president. Now, folks, to me, this was clearly a message delivered by the Iranian regime to the West, in particular to the United States. And guess what? Perhaps the U.S. just sent a message back to the Iranian regime. Yesterday, the U.S. Justice Department announced that it had seized dozens of Iranian websites, either sites directly linked to the Iranian regime or sites belonging to Iran's various proxies in the region. Now, very interesting, folks. One of these sites is presstv.com. It's a site I checked regularly because it gives you the Iranian perspective. These were the sites that were shut down, Iranian propaganda mouthpieces. U.S. government officials said yesterday in their announcement that these sites were seized because they were spreading disinformation, pro-Iranian regime propaganda, anti-Semitic, anti-Israel, and anti-American propaganda. Now, one of the interesting things here is that the domains for these websites were actually owned by U.S.-based companies, so they were taken down. Some of them are already back up. Iran, its proxies, were just able to find new domain addresses, so some of the sites are back up, but until now, at least, Press TV, which may be the biggest of them, an official Iranian state government mouthpiece, not only their website, but Press TV also has a TV network. They are still down, and if you go to that site, presstv.com, at least as I'm coming to you around 11 a.m. Eastern Time in the United States on Wednesday, June 23rd, basically a message, a graphic pops up saying that the U.S. government has seized this domain, this website, this domain address. I mentioned the proxies. Their sites were also taken down. It includes a site called Palestine Today, which gave the view of Hamas and Palestinian Islamic Jihad, the terror view of those two Iranian proxies. Another site was taken down, linked to the Iraqi Shia militia organization, Kataib Hezbollah. And then we had a site linked to the Houthis in Yemen, all removed by the U.S. government, and I believe it was something like 32 or 33 Iranian regime sites, all seized. Again, some of them are back up, but to me, an encouraging move by the U.S. government. Look, we've talked about it many times here on the Watchman Newscast that the Biden administration has been anything but tough on the Iranian regime. The timing is interesting. Raisi, again, ascended to the presidency over the weekend. That was clearly a message to the West, to the world, to the U.S., that Iran is not playing games. They are revealing their true hardline face in an attempt, no doubt, to gain leverage in these ongoing nuclear talks with the United States. Perhaps in taking down these websites, seizing these domains, the U.S. government is trying to get some leverage as well. Now, this is not the first time that the U.S. government has seized Iranian websites and domain addresses. Under the Trump administration, close to 100 sites linked to Iran's Revolutionary Guards Corps were also seized by the U.S. government. Hey, I hope the Biden administration keeps up the pressure. I'm doubtful that they will, and they seem very, very determined to re-enter that Iran nuclear deal. According to Iranian president, the current Iranian President Hassan Rouhani, who's been involved and has intimate knowledge of these nuclear talks that are going on in Vienna right now between the U.S., Europe, and the Iranian regime. Rouhani, who will leave office in August, Raisi will officially take that post this August. Rouhani says that the U.S. has agreed, the Biden administration has agreed to remove over 1,000 sanctions against the Iranian regime as part of these talks. That would be a very bad thing, folks. So on one hand, the Biden White House does a good thing. The Justice Department, they take down these sites. On the other hand, the administration is handing over the farm to the Iranian regime. Now, again, This is Hassan Rouhani's statement. We don't know if it is true, but I have to say I wasn't shocked to hear it, because to make this nuclear deal work, and again, folks, make no mistake about it, the Biden White House is fully committed to making this Iran nuclear deal work, to reviving that deal originally put into motion in 2015, put into action in 2015. President Trump, of course, pulled out in May 2018, and rightfully so. President Biden, from the outset, has said he wants to return to that deal, even though Iran just instigated a major war between Israel and Hamas in Gaza last month, even though Iran just elevated a man known as the Butcher of Tehran, who Amnesty International, not exactly a conservative group, is even calling for him to be investigated for crimes against humanity. He's now the Iranian president. Even with all that, still, the Biden administration has not walked away from the negotiating table. Clearly, they want to make this deal work. So when Rouhani talks about sanctions being lifted, and a lot of sanctions being lifted, I can't say I'm surprised. Sadly, we've also had Ibrahim Raisi, the new Iranian president, again, who will succeed Rouhani. He said the other day, look, I will not meet directly with Joe Biden, number one. And number two, sanctions or any discussion over Iran's ballistic missile program or Iran's support for terror around the region, that's off the table. That's according to Raisi, again, already striking a much more aggressive tone than Rouhani, and that is intentional by the Iranian regime. Remember, Raisi handpicked by Iran's supreme leader, Ayatollah Khamenei, who is the ultimate authority in that nation. Speaking real quick of intercontinental ballistic missiles and Iran's long-range missile program, U.S. officials are saying that earlier this month, Iran attempted to launch a satellite into space and they failed. This Iranian space program is not for peaceful purposes. Surprise, surprise. Launching a satellite into space is crucial in the development of intercontinental ballistic missiles, ICBMs for short. Folks, you develop ICBMs for one reason and for one reason only, to mount them with a nuclear warhead. You need the satellite in space to do that. This is a military space program by the Iranian regime. And by the way, those ICBMs are not for Saudi Arabia, they're not for Israel, they're not even for Europe at the end of the day. They are ultimately designed to target the United States. They do what the name says. They travel across continents, they travel across oceans. Don't forget that yes, Iran has dedicated itself, the Iranian regime, to wiping Israel off the map. It refers to Israel as the little Satan, but it still refers to America as the great Satan. So those ICBMs have an American address at the end of the day, if God forbid Iran is able to develop them and mount them with a nuclear warhead. Hey, last story in this Iran news roundup. A lot going on again with the world's #1 state sponsor of terrorism. Iranian officials announced today that they have thwarted an attempted sabotage attack against an Iranian nuclear facility in the city of Karaj. Now, that's about 25 miles northwest of the Iranian capital of Tehran. Folks, very scant details on this so far. We're not hearing much from the Iranian regime. Literally, all they said is they foiled an attempted sabotage attack against this nuclear facility. Now, I think there are three possibilities here. Number one, perhaps there really was an attempted sabotage attack against this Iranian nuclear facility. Perhaps the Iranians did thwart the attack. Number two, perhaps the sabotage attack was successful and Iran is trying to save face before the truth gets out. Number three, perhaps there was no attempted sabotage attack. Again, this could be a face-saving measure by the Iranian regime. Why do I say that? Well, folks, look at the past year. I called the summer of 2020 the summer of sabotage when it came to Iran. Starting around this time last year, June 2020, and continuing up until today, we have seen an uninterrupted string of mysterious explosions and apparent sabotage attacks against Iran's nuclear facilities, against Iranian ballistic missile factories, against petrochemical factories, against a drone-producing factory. It has been non-stop on Iranian soil, and Iran, the regime, has clearly been very embarrassed. They have taken a lot of black eyes over the past year with this ongoing sabotage campaign. I think of the Natanz nuclear reactor, which was shut down back in April due to sabotage. Also, the Bushehr nuclear reactor just a few weeks ago as well was affected and targeted. Now again, this string of successful sabotage attacks against Iran's nuclear facilities over the past year has been highly embarrassing for the Iranian regime. So it's hard to know what to believe when Iran makes an announcement like it did today that it had supposedly thwarted an attempted sabotage attack against one of its nuclear facilities. We will be keeping a very close eye on this for you right here at the Watchman Newscast. Hey, what happens in the Middle East does not stay in the Middle East. Events unfolding in that region right now will profoundly affect all of us, no matter where we live. And we want to be your one-stop shop right here at the Watchman Newscast for everything happening, all of the prophetic events unfolding in the world's most chaotic and strategic region. So keep it tuned right here. Be sure to subscribe and click the notification bell. Thanks for joining us today. Until tomorrow, God bless you. And remember, never hold your peace. Hey everyone, thanks for checking out the Watchman Newscast. If you enjoyed this episode and want to see more, make sure you go ahead and hit the like button, click subscribe, and tap the bell icon to turn on notifications for new Watchman Newscast episodes every weekday.